We will now be treated to some more music from the New York Police Department Emerald Pipes and Drums.
Well, good morning, everybody, and I'd like to thank Rob Herr and Zach Terwilliger for bringing this conference together, and especially thank Jesse Liu and John Huber, Jim Kroll for their leadership of the AGAC and the EOUSA, and of course, Tim Garrison for his wonderful rendition of our national anthem. And I really want to thank New York City's Police Emerald Society Pipe Band. One of these priorities has been fresh on my mind of late, and that is violent crime. We were all alarmed by the events in Dallas, Texas, where a disturbed veteran opened fire at the federal courthouse, including shooting at 3 AUSAs and one of their children. We're fortunate that the would-be shooter was the only casualty. And I am proud of the response of the courthouse security and of the FBI and of our U.S. Attorney's Office under the leadership of Erin Neely Cox. Now, today we're the lucky ones. Far too often I find myself writing condolence letters to the families of fallen law enforcement officers. And just in the past week, we have seen 5 officers killed in the line of duty, 4 of them shot by armed criminals. Police officers selflessly put their lives on the line to keep all of us safe, and attacks on them are an attack on all of us. These and other incidents are connected to the emerging willingness in some quarters of our society to countenance resistance to and violence against law enforcement officers. This department will not tolerate violence against police, and we will do all we can to protect the safety of our law enforcement officers. We can all be rightly proud of this administration's record on violent crime. We have made impressive progress, but we must keep up a full court press. We also need to take a strong stand against those who would use violence to intimidate people from exercising their rights to free speech and to participate in the democratic process. In addition to gang and guns, the other significant driver of violent crime is obviously drug crime, which represents another priority for our department. When I returned to the department as Attorney General, it was disheartening to learn about the state of the drug problem across the country. In most respects, the problem is much worse than it was in 1993. I believe that the last administration was not aggressive enough in fighting the drug threat. A lot of ground was lost, and a tsunami was allowed to build up, which is now hitting the country. But we can't be discouraged. When I look at the overdose deaths, the blighted lives, and the families and communities broken by drug addiction, it reminds me why we cannot surrender. We must work harder than ever. I am proud that the administration has shown much needed light on the opioid epidemic and that the department has taken a number of dramatic steps to tackle this national crisis head on. And while there are encouraging signs of progress, our work is far from over, as you all know. We also face an unprecedented immigration crisis on our southern border. The Department of Homeland Security is in the lead in tackling this problem. Most dramatically, the President has achieved a real breakthrough in our relations with Mexico, whereby the Mexican government is now taking a series of critical measures to control the flow of illegal migration. Just these initial steps are starting to bite. There is a real prospect that these actions, along with the efforts in Central America that we are taking, will help us turn the corner. National security must always be a top priority. The department is fully committed to combating terrorism, foreign intelligence threats, and the theft of intellectual property by foreign adversaries, and cyber attacks. These efforts lie at the core of our sworn oath to defend the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. First, over the last decade, we have achieved extraordinary successes in combating terrorism and terrorist threats at home and abroad, but we can never let our guard down. We must use all available lawful means to neutralize terrorists in the United States or elsewhere where we find them within our reach. The United States relies on many tools to combat international terrorism, and the work of the U.S. Attorney's Office has been a critical part of that effort. In appropriate cases, we will continue to prosecute terrorists as one important means to protect our citizens by removing these deadly threats from the face of the map. Second, among the greatest threats to our national security are those posed by rival foreign powers. Foremost among these is China, which we know to have both a robust intelligence operation and an economic strategy that includes exploiting the intellectual property of our companies and our citizens. We need to continue to pursue and indeed step up our China initiative. The threat of attack on our economic infrastructure, trade secrets, and intellectual property is ever growing, and we should be prepared to address it wherever we find it. Finally, and relatedly, we remain focused on the growing and evolving cyber threat. In the 21st century, increasing proportion of crime is cybercrime, as the dark web has become a black market for contraband that fuels criminal endeavors of all kinds. As organized crime becomes increasingly transnational, we see more and more crime move online. We have resources to address the cyber threats, but we must ensure that we use these resources efficiently to operate in an environment that grows increasingly vast and challenging. We must try our best to enforce federal law across the board with the limited resources we have. We must take ownership and accept accountability for our decisions. Every indictment that comes out of your office bears your name, and as you know, is your responsibility. It also ultimately reflects on your colleagues in the U.S. attorney community and all of us who work at the Department of Justice. And that is a grave responsibility, but an essential one, because the legitimacy of our system ultimately depends on this accountability from the AUSA on the line all the way up to the Attorney General. So with that, I'd like to close my remarks. Thank you all for the superb job you're doing, and repeat that I look forward to working closely with you in the months ahead. God bless.